So knowing that Jaguar Land Rover has already partnered with a few startups, I think certainly in autonomy is one of them in the domain of autonomous vehicles. So there's, if you are one of our startups, there's certainly multiple ways to interact with them going forward. So as you know, Moore's law has certain stipulations, and at MIT our law around this event is that we need to double the speed every 3 hours. So in the lightning talks to come, there's half the time, but the intensity of thinking is the same. So I don't know exactly how we're going to make up the difference, but solving complex, we're going to start very ambitiously with solving complex tech challenges in space, climate, and oceans with Jordan McRae. And maybe before I put him on stage, all of these in the next segment are what we would classify as local startups, in the sense that they all have an MIT connection, but they're based, or at least have an office near here. I guess that's how we define it. So let me see. I think this should be, all right.
Thank you very much.
Stage is yours.
So I'm an alumni of MIT, even though I'm here, and my degrees are in aeronautical astronautical engineering. And what's funny about the Aeroastro laboratories, I focused in robotics, distributed and collaborative robotics. What you find in the Aeroastro laboratories, which is many times the case, we do a lot of testing and research underwater on ocean robotic platforms. It's a lot cheaper and easier to test a prototype in the water than it is to actually send it up to space. And so this is an explanation of how I went from being a total space cadet to being passionate about anything related to water, and in particular, ocean conservation. It also explains why I'm wearing the Jacques Cousteau beanie on my head half the time. And so today, I run Octo23 Technologies, and we develop new technologies for ocean exploration and ocean conservation. And the area that we started with is underwater communication. And the reason for that is the insight is that all the technologies that we're talking about here today, Internet of Things, environmental monitoring, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, all of these things depend on an infrastructure of wireless or even wired communication, digital communication, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, radio, that we take for granted and does not work underwater. And so that's where we want to begin innovating and developing. And we want to do so in a way that those new technologies can actually contribute to our understanding of the ocean and our protection of the ocean. So the first product that we're releasing, knock on wood, hopefully summer 2017. I've been told that for these products, I have to release in the summer. I can't release any other time other than the summer, because it involves people's in bikinis and swimsuits, and apparently that's the appropriate time. An underwater, a connected diving and snorkeling mask that allows people to talk underwater. So I developed some IP and some patents a while back ago that allows for underwater voice communication. And so we've put that into the mask. And what we've developed recently is this next connection to how do we actually do something actively in the domain of ocean conservation. So in addition to the talking underwater, and we've got some cool technologies with bone conduction and things like that. So you actually do get this Iron Man Jarvis effect of hearing someone in your head, not through your ears, but you hear them through the vibration of your bones. We're also embedding sensors into the mask. So we're monitoring the temperature, acidity, pH, the depth, and the light as the person is diving or snorkeling in the ocean. And so effectively what we've done is we've taken a consumer product that we hope will be worn by people snorkeling, diving, recreationally, on vacation, and we've turned them into a crowdsourced platform for monitoring the health of the ocean. And because we're going fast, I want to explain, I guess, the next couple of slides to explain why do we care about this? Why not just stop at the walkie-talkie of the ocean? I'm, again, passionate about ocean conservation, and we know that more than 60% of the gross national product, the global gross national product, comes from our coastal region. So this is the 100 kilometers from the coastline. But we also know that these are some of the regions, some of the ecosystems that are most endangered. So this is a picture of a hypoxic dead zone where everything is dead, nothing can exist because the oxygen has been completely consumed by algae blooms. And this is coming from industrial runoff or man-made waste. So I'll leave it there in terms of stating it's an important problem to solve. And one of the ways that we're trying to solve very scientific problems like this is a thing called citizen science. And that's what our platform is very much linked to, in empowering everyday citizens like you and I, or your brothers and sisters that might not be in the technical field, to help in scientific exploration. One of the issues that we believe is important in this area is that it has to become a mainstream thing. Citizen science right now lives in this domain where very passionate geeks, such as myself, are more than happy to use their screensavers to search for extraterrestrial life, but this is still within a very limited scope. What we want is for the sort of infection of Pokemon Go-like applications to reach a level of scientific exploration. And so that's why we're creating consumer products, Internet of Things, and connecting it to science, scientific exploration, and contributing to science. So creating this dual platform of, again, consumer product and citizen science digital platform. And I'll end with saying that this sort of unique aspect of our business model, the fusion of citizen science and consumer product technology development, is connected to the uniqueness of how we develop that technology. So even from the early stage of R&D and development, we like to engage with larger corporations and scientific institutions to do that research and the pilot demonstrations that we'll be doing. So early next year, we're going to be in the Mediterranean Sea doing pilot testing of our platform, and we'd very much like to engage with scientific institutions and many of the companies that are represented here today to do that type of study and to do that type of work. I guess I'll end there. Was that fast enough?
Great. So there are at least two more things that people care about than the things we have discussed so far. Sports is one of them, and elections is another. Right? So here we are in London, so we're going to move a little bit into those two topics via fintech. So the topic here is the role of betting platforms in trying to predict these two, and I have Jason, I think. There he is. Jason Trost. Stage is yours.
Thanks.
I hope you can resolve who wins the next sporting events and who wins the future elections. Can you do that for us?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jason. I'm the founder of Smarkets. We're based in London. I came over from the States because betting is illegal in the United States, so it gave me a good reason to come check Europe out. So there's been two massive geopolitical events that everybody's been talking about, Brexit and Mr. Trump, and we followed them very closely on the betting markets. How many people here have heard the term prediction market? Excellent. So the reason why I got into betting, I studied computer science, but my first job at a university, I was a trader. And somebody showed me this website that would let you trade the presidential election. And I thought, holy cow, this is such a cool concept that you can take an electronic market and apply it to a real-world event. So that's what we did at Smarkets. We are taking financial technology and applying it to events. So what is an event market? There are many different words for it. You could call it a prediction market, you could call it a bet, you could call it an insurance contract, but in essence, you're trading money for risk. That's essentially what a bet is. So a lot of people, those of you that are familiar with prediction markets, they will say they got it wrong. The prediction markets and the betting markets got Brexit wrong and they got Donald Trump wrong. But I would argue that they got it exactly right. So for example, Trump was about a 20% probability going into the election, and he obviously ended up winning. He only lost about 80,000 votes, and I think if certain factors went the other way, it's very probable that Hillary would have won the election. So another way to translate Donald Trump's win is if you had 5 elections, Donald Trump would win one of them. So I would argue that the markets weren't wrong, they were correct. So one of the reasons why I think event markets, and I'm calling them event markets because I think people get hung up on the word prediction. One of the reasons why I think event markets are so important is for a few different reasons. One, I think they're the best way for us to aggregate information. So if you look at these two charts, they're way more informative about people saying X, Y, and Z experts are wrong or X, Y, and Z polls are wrong. you have a real-time model of what the wisdom of crowds thinks at any given time in real time, 24 hours a day. I find that really exciting, and I think it's really, you can tell a lot from these two graphs about what had actually happened with these two major events. The other two ways that people try to predict the future, which I just highlighted, are polls and experts. And we all know there are issues with experts. They don't agree, they can be wrong. And polls obviously have their own biases. What's your sampling? Are people answering truthfully? All these kinds of things. Nate Silver is probably one of the best people. A lot of you probably read Nate Silver. He's one of the best people that talks why polls work, where they don't work. But what I would argue is that event markets should be the main thing, not polls or experts. The reason why that event markets aren't as big as they need to be is because the technology tends to either be centered around betting or there's not enough liquidity. So most markets for event markets are in the context of a bet. So they use odds, either decimal odds or fractional odds, and that's very confusing if you just want to trade an event. The second problem with events is that the liquidity is very poor. The liquidity is poor because people don't want to participate in a betting market because of the stigma around that and also the stigma around the gambling industry. So that's what we're working at Smarkets. We're trying to bring event markets to the masses. I think they're an important tool for society, and they can be used for sports as well. But I'm more interested personally from an event perspective. Thank you.
So we haven't talked very much so far about cell phones. And I think that's a very sad thing because there shouldn't be a conversation in a serious academic setting, an industry, without cell phones because they're such a big part of our life. But the question is, what is the value generated from them? And that is a topic Eric Fulton hopefully will address for us.
Thank you, Trond. My name is Eric Fulton. I'm from a company called Safari Mobile. We're based down in Victoria. We're kind of slightly different than a lot of the other speakers who have been here today because we're a consumer. We sell things directly to consumers. We sell digital products to consumers. A lot of them are impulse purchased. A lot of them are kind of pointless, live psychic readings, things like that. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to tell you about what our market is like and what we're doing and how we're doing, how we make our way in it. So I'm sure you've all heard the joke about the two hikers who are hiking in the woods and the grizzly bear comes charging at them. And one of the hikers gets down and is getting ready to run. And the other hiker pulls out his backpack, puts on his running shoes. And the first hiker says, "Why are you putting on your running shoes? You can't outrun a bear." And the second hiker says, "I don't need to outrun the bear. I have to outrun you." Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because this is what we found on the internet, is that marketing is now kind of a winner-takes-all market. This is because of the affiliate networks out there, the performance networks, even on Google, when you have paid search, Google tries to prevent this, but it happens anyways, that if I can pay 1 pence more than the next person, then I can have all the traffic that I can afford. And the person who can pay 1 pence less gets no traffic at all. And so this is an issue, but just using we can argue about what a market is, but traditionally the sorts of markets that we enter into, we control about 80% of the marketing space in it because we tend to run better offers. Now, the second thing that I want to point out is that there's a number of famous psychology experiments. One of them is you bring a subject into a room and you say, part of this psychology experiment, I want you to speak to another person. So go grab 2 chairs from across the room and have them facing each other, and I'm going to go get the person that you're going to interview. And on average, people will put the chairs 80 centimeters apart. Then what you do is you put a computer in the corner of the room, and on it you have a screensaver, and on the screensaver you have a dollar bill which is waving, and you run the exact same experiment again, and people will put the chairs 118 centimeters apart. So there's a 47.5% difference in how far apart they put chairs on something as ridiculous as an irrelevant computer and irrelevant screensaver in the corner of the room. This is called priming. Priming is very important. Because Professor Bearsmith was talking about how he churns all this huge data and he gets a 12% improvement. Here, I stick a computer in the corner of the room and I get a 48% improvement or 48% change. And this actually works in the real world because you can have 2 identical, in fact, somebody's done this. You can put 2 identical web pages up, and one of them has a green Start Now button, and one of them has a red Start Now button. And the red Start Now button has a 21% better conversion rate than the green Start Now button. It has all the exact same text. Everything is identical, but there's a huge change. And so you can churn through the data, or what you'll find is there's just a lot of random factors that just make people do things differently. So does anybody have any ideas on why a red button is more valuable than a green button? It's a trick question. I wasn't actually going to wait, because it doesn't really matter. Because when you actually analyze it, what it turns out is that some people like red buttons, some people like green buttons, some people like blue buttons. And what you actually do is you do all sorts of data analysis, and you look at user journeys, and you figure out which button people want. And in fact, that's what we do. So we have all of our computer servers, our templated servers, and the bulk of the traffic goes to the main offer. And then we have variant offers, where we change the colors of the buttons, and we change all sorts of other things. We take a small sliver of traffic, we send it to it. We then analyze it by different traffic sources, and this traffic source, for whatever reason, they like blue buttons. Give them blue buttons, because we'll end up selling more. These people like green buttons, so that's what we do. So where are we going with this? Well, if you put these two concepts together, the internet, especially marketing, and on mobile phones, and I'll talk about this in a second, the internet is a winner-take-all environment, and the winners aren't picked by merit. And the people who are promoting the products are trying to make as much money as possible. So it's not actually the people who are deciding the adverts that are going in front of people are not the people, it's not the consumer. I'll talk about that in a second. And it's not the person who has the product. So my talk is about, actually it's not up here. My talk is about value generation on mobile platforms. And I've kind of just discredited the idea of value generation, because consumers don't really have a choice. They interact with the ads that get presented to them. And this is particularly true on mobile phones. People don't tend to go on mobile phones and do a directed search and find things and compare features and decide which ones what they want to do, which ones they want to buy. Largely, they're consuming time, they're bored, and they're doing random walks. And so these subliminal advertising is particularly good. Somebody's doing a random walk, something draws them over to this thing, and then we sell them a product. So there is kind of a way out of this, which is that Deloitte did a research project, which was, or has a report, said there's no place like phone. You probably wouldn't be surprised that many people check their mobile phone immediately before going to sleep, and many people check their mobile phone immediately upon waking. You may not realize is that amongst under 35-year-olds, 49% of them check their mobile phone in the middle of the night. 2/3 of them are just checking the time. That's fine. You wake up, you check the time. But 1/3 of them are doing instant messaging. 27% of them are doing social media. A quarter of them are doing email. This is in the middle of the night when they should be sleeping. Now, why are people doing this? It's because they want to stay connected. They want to stay connected to their friends. They want to stay connected to what's going on in the world. Everybody wants to, there's, I think it's 15% of the population gets anxiety if they can't be online because they feel they're out of touch. Now, mobile phones, it's not surprising that this is happening on mobile phones. Phones have always been about communications. All that we've changed is the way that we communicate. Instead of speaking now, we send text messages, we send instant messages, etc. So going back to the thing about value generation on mobile phones, how do you generate value on mobile phones? You're not going to like this answer, the people who are creating things. It's all about branding. Branding 101, you need a personality, you need to have stories, you need to stand out, and you need to be something that people want to be associated with. And on a mobile phone, it's a communications device, so you have to do more of that. You have to become friends with people through social media, through viral marketing. You have to communicate with them like friends. You have to send them tweets. You have to use instant messaging. But another important feature of brands is authenticity, and that's where the rubber meets the road. So if you actually have a product that actually does something, then you actually have messages to send people, and they will actually be loyal to you, and they'll become fans, and you will actually get a viral effect. And so just wrapping up, that's what my company does, is that we use technology and data. And what we found is you don't try to be right, you try to do everything. You use creative people to get diversity and let the data figure out which ones work, and you tune it that way. It's all just automated. And so that's it. Thank you very much.
Some conversations are remembered, and they matter, and others are not. This is what the next speaker has figured out. And she's analyzing conversations in very specific situations, and I think we'll learn from it. Thank you. Catherine from Luminoso.
Hello, everyone. It's particularly exciting being here in the local company bin this time. We just opened up in London about a couple months ago. We're Boston-based, but we now have an EU entity, and we now have folks on the ground here in London, so we're very, very happy to be here. Wrong clicker. Oh, nope, now it works. All right, so we came out of the MIT Media Lab in 2010, where I used to run a group called Digital Intuition, and our goal was to help computers understand language, the way people speak, the creative language that we use, in the same way that we do. If we're talking, when we make jokes, all the presentations we've seen today, they tie into stuff that's going on in the back of your head that everybody knows, but it's very hard for computers to understand and computers to keep up. And where that kind of language gets used all the time is in customer service. So if you're calling a company, if you're talking to a representative, if you're trying to solve a problem, you want to be understood. And when people want to be understood, they use incredibly creative, interesting language because that's the way we're evolved. We're actually evolved to say exciting and interesting things when we want someone else to listen to us, and when our product is broken, boy, do we want someone else to listen to us. But customer service has sort of been going through an interesting time recently. Customer service, Gartner and Forrester both say that customer service is most important in one particular area. It's when companies have, and it ties to ROI, when customers have a lot of choice between different providers in that particular area, and when there's a high delta between the reputations for customer service between the companies in that market. And what's happening right now is just because of the changes in business models, more and more types of businesses are becoming into a vertical that fits into one of those categories. They're becoming these kind of companies. And that's interesting because very few people right now are taking the information that comes into something like a contact center and using it to change business. In fact, only 17% of companies, according to Salesforce, have actually fully integrated the customer feedback they get inside their organization. And a couple years ago, actually, Gartner said that about 70% of companies that are profitable will be using customer feedback in real time, but very few are today. And we're getting pretty close to 2017. And so that means that when companies and when customers are talking to each other, customers increasingly expect companies to be able to react and act on customer feedback. They expect it to be a conversation. They want to talk to a brand like they want to talk to a person. Everything is becoming conversational these days. And that's important because about 89% of customers, according to Harris Interactive, have actually left a brand because of a customer service experience. And I really don't know who the other 11% are, honestly, because I think all of us have probably done that at one point or another. And so to tackle this, we started out going back to machine learning. And at the time, we hadn't hit everything we've hit about big data and deep learning. And so sentiment analysis became something that everybody really wanted to tackle. Can we take this thing? Can we say, is it positive or is it negative? At the time, there was a lot of social media, but we were also looking at emails coming into contact centers, things like that. But the problem with sentiment is that it's incredibly nuanced, but the kind of questions that actually impact ROI are often not answered by positive or negative. So we're looking at things, deeper questions, more complicated questions, and saying how can we actually take this information and help it drive business processes? Not only can we answer questions like the question I have on the screen, but how can we understand things that are more deep and understand how they impact ROI, which things that are going wrong are actually going to change the KPIs that you care about. AI has been changing very rapidly. We've been hearing about that this morning a lot. But there's a particular problem, which is that the kind of machine learning that is typically used and that you hear about for AlphaGo takes millions and millions and millions of examples. Nobody has this kind of data in the contact center and customer service. It just doesn't exist. It's enterprise scale data, not web scale data. And that's a problem because Google, when they're doing things like AlphaGo, they have the system play itself all the time. You can't have your contact center play itself, call itself. That doesn't make any sense. So what you need instead is a type of machine learning. You need a way to take this power of this machine learning and scale it down to when you have enterprise scale data, and that's where we come in. We help companies automatically harness the power of vector-based machine learning, which often gets called deep learning, and use that to be able to understand and optimize what's going on in customer service with customer feedback. And I think the one thing I'm going to leave you guys with, which is a general thought on artificial intelligence and sort of the artificial intelligence revolution, is a lot of people look at AI and they want to use AI to be able to do things that they're currently doing faster. So they want to be able to automate processes. They want to, if they're dealing with customer service by forwarding things into nice little buckets, they want to be able to forward them into buckets faster. I think one thing that I want to say is open your mind. AI lets you do a lot more. It lets you answer problems and questions in ways that you hadn't thought about before. So really, when you're out there and you're looking at new solutions, think outside the lines and think outside the box. So with that note, I'm going to give you back a minute.
Remember back in the old days when there were printer rooms and you printed out these massive amounts of paper that were connected to each other, and then you were carrying this thing and you know what it was printing. Like if you had it out in the sun one day, you couldn't see it anymore. Well, we have moved on from there, haven't we? Printing has become an industrial platform, or so people would have us think. But Ed Brady, I think, is going to tell us about how it's much more than an industrial platform and how 3D printing is actually changing the very materials we surround ourselves with.
Thank you very much. So, NVBots is an enterprise additive manufacturing technology company based in Boston. And I am the Director of Finance and European headquarters. How cloud-connected 3D printing will turn everybody into manufacturers. Now, I'll assume everyone here knows a bit about additive manufacturing and 3D printing. And to be brief, I'll skip over kind of some of the technology and be process agnostic until the very end. So there are barriers to realizing the promise of additive manufacturing. Now, I hope we know the promise of additive manufacturing is flexible, economic, on-demand manufacturing. But access, costs, process variability and quality, material choice, material properties, and cycle time are in the way. Cloud connectivity can start to address some of these barriers. Access. With cloud connectivity, physical access is no longer required, so we get true distributed manufacturing and multi-user management. Costs. Cloud connectivity gives us efficient sharing of capital equipment. This is one of the largest costs and the upfront costs that we can spread out over many users. And through multi-printer management, we can spread those resources over campuses, organizations, or even print centers. And process variability and quality. We've talked today quite a lot about machine learning, and large-scale data collection and analysis is vital to really improve process variability for 3D printing. And that's only possible through cloud connectivity. And remote monitoring and support can improve user experiences and quality throughout the user activity. So we come back to these issues. And really, other technology is required to solve and remove these barriers. So that's why our company, NVBots, is not just looking at cloud connectivity, but machine automation, material flexibility, multi-material printing, low-cost materials, high deposition rate and scalable printing. To really print on a large scale, you have to print in a large size. Low power, low thermal stress printing in real materials that can be used straight away, and in-process closed-loop feedback. This will improve quality like no other system before, and down to voxel-level control and statistics for verification and quality. So that's it. NVBots, our mission is to provide industrialized 3D printing solutions that enable manufacturers, which could be anybody or everybody, and designers to make production quality parts faster and cheaper than any other additive manufacturing system in the world. Thank you.
So I don't know if you realize this, but these guys are printing metals 21, last time I counted, 21 types of metals and sending it up to space and using it for satellites and aerospace manufacturers. This is pretty amazing stuff. So when I was connecting with the next speaker, and this happened at Golden Square here in London yesterday, I was expecting someone with a sort of very meticulous gray beard and a very, old-fashioned suit that was 55 years old, I think. Enrico is not that, but he has accomplished something that I think you guys here in London will see very, very soon that is quite remarkable. I'll leave the stage to him to explain what it is that he has done without getting a gray beard.
Is this it? Yeah. Good afternoon. Friday afternoon. Most people probably want to go home, so I'll try to be very fast. First of all, I wanted to thank MIT. I want to thank BT for the great day and for giving us the opportunity to talk about our startups. I am an MIT alumni. I have founded a business called Fora just about a year ago. We're about to open our first stores in the next few weeks. What we do in simple terms is we buy buildings around London and we turn them into phenomenal workspaces. Our theory is basically, if you work at BT, you can get a very pretty office like this one. We think everybody should have access to the same quality of a building and quality of an experience. And so we are basically providing the masses with a product that I think it's not affordable unless you work for BT, Google, or one of the tech companies. So we create space to be brilliant, and the company is really based on two principles. One is amazingly functional and beautifully designed offices, but more importantly, it's all about services. We come from a background, all of us work in the hospitality industry. We think that people should focus on running their own business, and they shouldn't be bogged down by all the other stuff that needs to happen around an office. So we are there, my team, and we are there to basically create an environment where people can focus on their business. We came with this idea, and actually we are fully funded by a firm that is funded by two MIT guys as well, so who I went to school with. We came with this idea because fundamentally we think that the way people work has changed dramatically and will only accelerate. People don't want to be sitting on a desk for 8 hours a day. I think the technology enables them to free themselves from the desk, but more importantly, I think it's just a more pleasant day if you introduce variety and mobility to your workday. We also know, especially those of you who live in London, that real estate is pretty expensive and it's just going to continue to be expensive. So when you have a space, you got to make very intelligent use of it. And so the combination of those two things enable Fora to exist. I don't think Fora could have been founded 10 years ago, but I think definitely that Fora is the right business for today. What we do is we basically we provide space for anybody. A lot of people who think about co-working think it's just for startups. We take the best of co-working, the best of a service offering in the hospitality, and we create a business that we call pro-working. It is all about work. We divide our buildings into different zones, so you can introduce variety to your workday. So there are parts of the zone that are very sociable, but they're also part of our building which is allow you to be very focused and very, very productive. Again, with the idea is that variety will enhance your workday, and but at the same time very respectful of the people, of the fact that founders, CEOs, company owners expect their staff to work as well. So we want to enable a great day at work. The offer is flexible, which is another big thing that I have personally. I don't know why today somebody needs to sign up for a 10-year lease when they got to pick up an office. I think it's, it's much nicer to be on a monthly contract. It's much nicer to decide if you don't like a place that you can move. We put the burden on us to ensure you don't go because you love it too much, you like the service, you like the environment, you like the vibe, so you're gonna stay. But we're basically trying to change dramatically the way we think about real estate and the landlord-tenant relationship. And it's pretty funny we're doing it, given that my backers are actually real estate, it's a real estate company. But we think that in today's age, that should change. The one thing we do, we're very, very focused on, is bring innovation to these buildings. And so we have established a relationship with MIT, for example, and we do research at MIT to figure out what makes a good productive day. So one of the things we have in our buildings, for example, is a technology that comes out of MIT that enables you to have noise cancellation. It's a speaker that has 5 frequencies, and the frequencies will modulate depending on the sound and the noise around, so that in your office or in your space, you can't hear what's going on around you when other people are chatting. It's actually a system that works in the healthcare sector in the US because obviously the privacy. We think it will be very appropriate for the work environment, and we have introduced it. So this is one of the examples of the things we do to create what we think is the office of the future, but the office is available today. I'm going to finish up to say we're London-based. We have a network of offices around London, and we think there is a tremendous opportunity for people to come experience Fora. Thank you.